Welcome friends, let us continue our journey with Unical Academy's CISSP Simple Training Series. This is part 2 of lesson 5 that talks about protecting security of assets related to domain 2. In part A, we covered these two. Now in this second part, part B, we will be focusing on data protection, different data roles, as well as the bare minimum security. That is what the security baseline that an organization should follow. In data protection methods, there are various options, particularly when you are dealing with the content, DRM comes into picture. When you are handling the data sitting on the cloud, CISSP, Cloud Access Security Broker, comes into the importance. These three dealing with the data, maybe protected health information, PII data, personally identifiable information. How it should be done when each is coming into picture, let us discuss subsequently in next slides. Now let us start with DRM. What is digital rights management? It is simply attempt to provide copyright protection for the digital work. What are the various options available? This DRM license is a license key that gets registered in registry or certain encrypted key, always validating the authorized use of particular software. Windows operating system itself can be attributed under this criteria. Whereas the second one, persistent online authentication, when you are saying this, online connectivity should be persistent. Periodically, the client, the application that is running on the client, that pings the server to validate whether the license key that is being in use is right or wrong, or valid or invalid. That is the persistence. The third one, continuous audit trail. It is some sort of hybrid version of the persistent online authentication plus DRM license. So it runs on its own, but periodically it goes and checks whether it is valid or not. Majorly where it is used is for commercial or high cost software such as Primavera or maybe Microsoft Project Plan. Organization may be purchasing only one license or two licenses, and if multiple people are using, the basic expectation from the vendor is you use wherever you want to on multi systems, but you are expected to uninstall on one system prior to installing on any other system. That's what it meant by continuous audit trail. This automatic expiration, an organization or individual can purchase a license that may be valid for 6 months, 1 year or 3 years based on the duration. After that, automatically it expires. That is simply DRM, which is nothing but the prior extension of how the data loss prevention or data loss protection we studied in previous lesson. This is very interesting and critical aspect that we need to be aware. The various roles that an organization has to follow, maybe from compliance requirement or maybe for internal own guidelines or security based on the security policy. For CISSP exam, remember certain key terms. Data owner, always whenever you see data owner, ultimate responsibility for data protection. And another part is all these data owners may be liable by law. They may liable in case of any negligence on their part in data breach. The critical activities are the responsibilities of data owner. Very simply, define the rules, establish the rules for appropriate use and protection, provide inputs while designing the security policy, or while implementing the security policy, give the direction for the next level staff, the workers. Most of the times, the data owners could be CIOs or CASOs or at the CTO level, the very senior members of the organization. Next comes the asset owners, also called system owners. These are the people, these are the individuals develops a system security plan, majorly the systems on which certain data or the information gets processed, safeguarding those systems potential data breach or potential theft that the organization system designated system owners or assets owners need to handle. Very simple example, who is the asset owner? If we take in a simple terms, there is a database that is actually being used by software team and a web server that is used or that is facilitated by IT team. For this particular scenario, asset owner for the database server is the software development team. Asset owner for the IT infrastructure or this web server is IT team or whoever is facilitating the hosting. That is the approach. Coming to business or mission owners, the guys who are responsible for the specific profit center or a department for a specific goal, they are the business or mission owners. For example, department sales head could be the business owner or mission owner for all sales activities. How to differentiate between the business owner and other activities? IT or the security team may be giving certain recommendations, but implementation of those recommendations lies on the business owner, because the cost involved in implementing those security control must be approved, must be reviewed based on the viability of that implementation by business owners. That's the issue. These two terms, data processors and data controllers, are very important, particularly when you are dealing with any GDPR related questions in CISSP exam. Simply, what GDPR defines is a data processor is a natural or legal person, public authority or agency solely handle the data on behalf of the data controller. Okay. Now we are saying, who is data controller? Remember, in very simple terms, rather getting confused between data controller and data processor. Always remember your payroll, your employer who deals with your employee ID, your social security, your tax data is a controller. An organization such as ADP that runs your payroll can be processor. So a company that collects the data on an individual behalf, such as employee or a patient, can be called data controller. Or whoever is processing, maybe the expectations of benefits or the billing handled by doctor's office external agency or the ADP or such as payroll agencies dealing are the processors. So that's how you need to remember. So the other aspect, very clearly understand this. So not much confusion if the basic concepts are clearly understood. Custodian is who is responsible for safeguarding the data. Most of the times, or in almost always, the data owners delegate this work to data custodians. So a custodian helps to protect the integrity and security of data by ensuring that it is properly stored and protected, because the work is delegated to them. That's what it is. Ultimately responsible for the entire data across the organization at CEO level on the systems on which the data is getting processed or by them. You take a call whether to implement a control or not, because the profit center is handled by you, because you are a business owner. So who is owning the data? Who is processing the data? Whether I am an employee or I am a processing person such as ADP is dealt here. And I am authorized, I am responsible to own and safeguard the assets and the controls is this. Okay, who are these two? The administrators, very simply, the individuals who may come with elevated privileges than any normal users are the administrators. Users may be a clerk or somebody who is meant or who is designated certain activities or responsibilities. The dunning agent or the collection agent, loan processors, all these are the users. When an access needs to be provided for these users, either as database administrator or system administrator, they can be considered as the administrator with designated, identified, delegated, elevated privileges to access management or to authorization management of the users. That's how all the data roles can be remembered. Now, the next section, the baseline, the critical aspect of the entire CISSP. Remember, whenever you see baseline in any question in CISSP exam, the minimum expected requirements. Ultimately, the entire CISSP goes around security. What security? Just the three triads, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. In how many ways you can safeguard and how many ways potentially there is a threat, only around that entire CISSP syllabus goes. So to start or to understand baseline, first understand what you want to safeguard. What is the impact in case of any breach? Whether it would be low impact for the organization's mission, or it is moderate impact, or it is very high impact. First, that classification on the importance of the data or asset. What is data? Whatever information or the numbers or the names that an organization dealing. What is an asset? Anything that is a value add, people, process, systems, products, projects, everything is an asset. So once it is done, once this impact analysis as baseline is done, then we need to work on what is covered and what sort of customization need to be done for that covered segment. There comes the second aspect, the tailoring and scoping. After selection of the control baseline based on the impact assessment, an organization should work on the next steps. A big part of the tailoring is aligning the controls with an organization's specific security requirements. What exact specific requirements we want to consider, that decides overall tailoring and scoping. The tailoring and scoping deals with four critical activities. First, identify what controls, identify the controls that are required, the common controls, and then apply that for the scope that you are considering. Whether this identified control is possible, or do you want to go for certain alternate options, maybe from cost perspective or the practical perspective, which is the compensation controls that we want to consider. After that, do the cost benefit analysis, assign the values for each control that is being considered for protecting the data. Based on that, implement the control, take a call on control implementation. That's what the four steps of tailoring and scoping. After that, understand what the organization should maintain or what are the compliance requirements. So low, medium, high impact. After that, what you want to consider, what you don't want to consider based on various options. Then decide the industry for which your organization is expecting the security to be followed, the basic compliance, where what are the standards. For example, payment card industry, PCI DSS. If you are dealing with European Union, if your organization is dealing with European Union, GDPR guidelines, or any healthcare specific, it is HIPAA. Similarly, if dealing with government agencies or federal government projects, NAST, SP 500, SP 800 guidelines. So based on these, the standards need to be followed. Here comes end of our 5th chapter of official guide, or the 5-part 5B, lesson 5B of our CISSP simple learning series. Now quickly let us have the recap of these two sections or two parts that we covered. What is part A and part B? Data and assets need to be classified based on the importance for the organization's mission. Also classify the sensitivity, whether it is personally identifiable information or protected health information or proprietary information of an organization. We also studied data in state, rest, data in transition, data in use. Different endpoint and network data loss preventions we covered. And data needs to be distracted after its lifetime. The cleaning, purging, erasing options we studied. Whatever we do, in spite of all the distractions, there is a possibility of certain data remnants, and the hackers or the culprits can still steal it. So how something should be distracted so that it cannot be retrieved is covered here. In certain ways, certain areas, or by law or due to organizational compliance requirements, organization retain the data, and that should be defined in the retention policy. A product has its end of life. After that, no longer that particular version of the product is sold by the vendors, and support that can be extended even after product development is stopped is EOS, that also we covered. Different rights, digital rights management, the licensing, online persistent way of validating, that we covered here. Cloud access security broker, it is a sort of firewall for the cloud way. So authorization, access, privileges, everything can be done. One point I forgot to cover, cloud access security broker critically helps the organization in identifying IT shadow or shadow IT. So an unauthorized IT access is happening on the cloud, which is not approved by IT department, that can be easily figured out by CISSP. Pseudonymization, this we briefly covered, giving the pseudo sequence to protect the individual's identity is pseudonymization. Tokenization, that is used in the credit card industry. Majorly, tokenization is a box. Credit card number goes, the tokenization actually generates the token for card approval or process. So neither the POS or the shop owner, anybody will be or would be retaining the credit card information anywhere else. That's the tokenization. Anonymization, majorly used for research purposes. The research organization requires certain data, majorly population health management or the census data. While collecting that, the anonymization comes into picture. We also covered various data roles, data owner, asset owner, and other aspects, including the end users and the administrators. The last is the importance of baseline, how the baseline should be used and what are the importance of that we studied. Here comes end of our session. See you in next video. Thank you. Have a good day.